Jelena, delighted to have you here. Thanks for joining me. And just by way of very brief introduction, as you know, I'm very interested in the topic of career mobility. I'm super excited to be talking to you about that today because you started out as a lawyer, but now you're also a leader, a thought leader, an author, and an educator. So would you mind if we start by you introducing yourself as a person?
Sure. So thank you, Ed. I'm the General Counsel of Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, where I'm responsible for a comprehensive range of legal issues related to carrying out the mission of the organization. Gavi is a public-private global health partnership with the status of an international organization in Switzerland and is based in Geneva.
Brilliant. And how would you actually define your skill set as a lawyer?
I started off as a derivatives lawyer, actually, in the US. Then I moved to Croatia and worked first as an in-house lawyer in a commercial bank, and then as a project finance lawyer for a US law firm. I then moved to Germany and worked as an equities capital markets lawyer for another US law firm. And after that, I spent nearly 11 years at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EBRD, in London, where I worked during the first 7 years as a banking transactions lawyer. Then spent a year on secondment in the compliance department, then led a team that provided regulatory advice to the governments of EBRD's countries of operations. And that led me to develop EBRD's FinTech regulatory practice area. I also went on secondment to the Bank of England, where I worked on regulatory matters primarily related to payments. And finally, now I'm working as a GC at Gavi, where I'm covering anything from employment disputes to contracts with the pharma companies. So I'm a lawyer through and through, but with a very broad and versatile skill set. And at the beginning of my career, I would always think, gosh, how am I going to jump into a new area? And I've come to realize, not only from my own experience, but also from the experience of recruiting other lawyers, that if you're a good lawyer with excellent analytical and drafting skills, you will learn a new area very quickly, and you will often do better than someone who is a so-so lawyer who has been working in the same area for a number of years.
Jelena, that's really fascinating. What a career to date. Leads me on to the next question, which is what actually drives you professionally?
Well, I'm really driven by achieving results and constantly setting new challenges and learning new things. I really like law, as you can tell, and am constantly thinking about and examining novel legal questions. So as a result, in the last few years, I've become really interested in technology. Now, I'm not a techie at all. But I'm interested in the novel legal questions that the use of technology raises. So in my free time, I recently took a number of certification courses in cybersecurity, data privacy, and machine learning, and really loved it. And now in my role as a manager of a legal function, what drives me is I really care about performance. And I'm continuously thinking about ways in which legal function in the organization can deliver services in an efficient and cost-effective way. So this requires thinking through the careful balancing of outsourcing versus doing work in-house, standardizing as much as possible, and providing our internal clients with the tools such as templates, playbooks, and trainings that enable them to do as much of the easy work as possible and to come to us with more complicated questions.
That's really, really fascinating. It's also great to see that you've pushed yourself to onboard new skill sets and to experience new areas and challenges. Just on new challenges, the role at Gavi, absolutely fantastic timing. What an interesting place to be. But what actually attracted you to the role in the first place, and what have you learned from being in the institution?
So I am responsible, as I said, for the entire spectrum of legal issues in the organization, from employment disputes, insurance and procurement matters, all the way to agreements with governments, other international organizations, and pharma companies, as well as capital markets documentation related to the issuance of vaccine bonds. So what attracted me to the role is precisely that. the breadth of issues that I would be responsible for and that I would learn about. Plus, of course, being part of the executive team and strategic decision-making in the organization. And also, Gavi is an organization that's transitioning from a startup to a more mature corporate structure. And it's quite exciting, albeit challenging, to be part of that transition.
Fantastic. No, that's truly interesting, actually. And you've managed to also fit in time to write, I believe, 2 books is right. How do you find time for that?
Well, first of all, I love research and writing, and I love thinking about novel legal issues. And my book writing has always evolved from a research project that I was doing at work. So, for example, while working at a commercial bank in Croatia back in 2006, I was part of the working group that was tasked with drafting new capital markets law in Croatia. And so that involved naturally quite a bit of research. And then 2 years later, I worked as a capital markets lawyer in Germany and was doing quite a bit of research for a law firm partner. And I ended up then writing a relatively short 150-page practical book on capital markets for Croatian companies. So it typically arises from me noticing a gap in the market and thinking, this is a goldmine of legal issues that people are often asking about and that no one has written about. Wouldn't it be good to write about it? So similarly, as I mentioned, about 3 years ago, I was trying to develop a FinTech regulatory practice area at EBRD. And as part of our thought leadership and marketing efforts in that area, together with Clifford Chance, we wrote 2 reports on crowdfunding regulation and blockchain-based smart contracts. And that led me to realize that there wasn't a single book that covered a broad range of legal and regulatory issues around FinTech. Of course, I didn't have the level of expertise or time to write the entire book myself, so I crowdsourced and first researched and came up with a table of contents, then researched some more to identify potential contributors of various chapters. Then I networked quite a bit and then hassled quite a bit to make sure everyone submitted their chapters on time. And then obviously it did involve quite a bit of work to edit and ensure relative consistency of style. And this year I did the same for health tech and just published a book last month on health tech law and regulation, which I edited and co-authored, and which covers a broad spectrum of issues associated with the use of technology in the healthcare sector.
Wow, two really exciting subjects. Dare I ask, have you got another book in the offering, or is there anything else you're thinking about at the moment?
I'm doing the 2nd edition of the FinTech book now. The book did quite well, so we're now updating it. And as you can imagine, FinTech regulation is a very dynamic area where I imagine there will be quite a few updates to a number of chapters.
That's fantastic. I look forward to seeing that. And just from your vantage, you deal a lot with private practice lawyers. What would you say about the provision of legal services from a private practice standpoint?
So, I would really advise private practice lawyers to think about their value for money proposition. As I'm sure you know, it's a very competitive market with a lot of alternative law firm structures emerging that are promising to provide services in a more cost-efficient way. So I think law firms really need to start thinking about alternatives to their traditional, billable hour / fixed or capped fee offering. And what I've seen that some law firms have started doing, and I really welcome, is that for large projects, they offer a so-called legal that's embedded in the in-house legal team for the duration of the project, which allows the in-house team to have a few law firm lawyers available during the peak time, while law firm lawyers, on the other hand, still continue, at least partially, to work on the projects for the law firm. And another advice that I would give is to really invest in the pitch documentation. Over the years, I've overseen lots of competitive selections for projects, and I certainly appreciate that putting together a pitch involves a lot of non-billable hours at the risk of not winning the project in the end. But you will really stand out if you demonstrate in your pitch that you have thought carefully about that particular project and how you would approach it, rather than just putting together a rather generic pack of prior experience and lawyers' bios. which just very evidently suggests that you haven't really thought too much about this particular client and this particular project.
No, that's really interesting, and I imagine very useful to law firms. It's such a competitive sphere, and taking those sorts of insights forward, I'm sure that there's some significant value in that. Which leads me on to the next question. What actually keeps you up at night? What sort of things are you grappling with at the moment?
Well, being the global health sphere in the middle of the pandemic, as you can imagine, has been quite challenging over the last few months. So for the last few months, I've been working together with my team and a number of colleagues at Gavi pretty much around the clock on setting up a program called the COVAX facility, which is a global facility aimed at ensuring equitable access of COVID vaccines when they become available to all countries that join. And so far, we've had over 150 countries join under different strands of the program. And as you can imagine, it's a project of huge scale, enormous complexity, and potentially quite significant legal risks. It's been described as building a plane as you're trying to fly it in the midst of the pandemic vortex, but definitely not a comfort zone type of project. And it suffices to say that it's been keeping me up at night.
Yeah, dare I say it, also unprecedented times as well. What an incredible thing to be working on at this sort of time. Now, with all of that in mind and everything you've been doing, where do you actually see yourself in 5 years? What's the future?
Well, I see myself constantly learning and growing within my work and developing new skills, really. And I'd like to be known for my thought leadership in the areas of technology and law. And for my ability to run an efficient legal function in an organization and provide high quality legal advice to my clients.
Absolutely fantastic. Well, there we have it. What a really fantastic introduction, and it's great to hear about how your experience and your CV has really grown quite organically, but also seemingly with that desire to take on new challenges and try new things, and also very interesting to hear about your new frontline role. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Sharing those insights, and
thank you.
hopefully we'll connect soon.
Right. Okay.